Alrighty, welcome to Office Hours with Rod McDermott, founder and CEO of Project Activate and CEO of McDermott and Bull Executive Search, one of the nation's top executive recruiting organizations with offices throughout the US, Canada, and Europe. Office Hours is a live video series where we answer your most challenging questions about landing a job, pursuing your dream job, or overall career advice. I'm your co-host, Kristen Farrenford, and today's topic is how to assess a company's culture. And before we get started, this session is 30 minutes. So please send in your question. First come, first serve.
Yeah, we want to spend, thank you, Kristen, by the way. I always love your intros.
Yeah.
We do commit to spend half our time answering questions from viewers. We do get a few in advance because people send us some emails the couple days in advance once they see the topic. So those are always helpful. It gives me a little chance to kind of think about them too, which is pretty cool. But we want to answer any questions that you all are having about your job search challenges, you name it, throw it out there. We'll take a stab at it. No matter what, we'll take a stab at it. Maybe we can even have a little discussion with some of the folks on this too. So feel free to put them out there.
Absolutely. So today's topic, something that you're really passionate about, something that also probably sparked Project Activate, which was culture, right? Culture, finding the right fit, where you should be, where you want to be, and what company or what career path leads you to that. So let's talk a little bit about it. What are some initial thoughts for how do you assess a company's culture?
Yeah, it's funny. I want to, before I jump into that, and I always do this to you, Chris, I never answer your very first question.
There's a question, but I don't want to answer that just yet.
I don't want to answer that just yet, but I will get to that, hopefully before I forget the question.
Okay.
But it's really about, I was thinking onto this, right? Just recently, as I talk to companies and I talk to employees of companies and, some of the counterparts, it could be the CEO that we're doing a search for, it could be the head of talent acquisition or the head of HR who's pulling us in. And when they tell me about the company and why they love it so much, it's oftentimes the culture first, the mission second, right? Rarely, if a company has an amazing mission, but a really bad culture, do people really love it, right? But oftentimes the opposite is true. They buy into the mission even more because they love the culture, right? So it starts with culture. And, you've all heard that that quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? So, everybody thinks we need to have the best strategy in the world. We need to have all these, great plans and vision and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, culture is what's going to keep people coming back. It's going to keep people motivated. It's going to keep people engaged. And it's also going to put them in the right frame of mind to help them be the solution to your challenges, right? You want your employees to help you solve challenges. So as a company CEO, for me, it starts with culture. If I can start with culture and get people to want to be part of the solution, then I've got this huge brain trust of people that are trying to help make our company great, right?
Absolutely. And what's great about the executive network for McDermott and Bull Executive Network, I know a lot of members are on today from our EN. When we do our roundtables and we strategize about, or kind of networking, hey, I want to land here, or I'm thinking of going to this company or this industry, culture gets talked about. Oh, yeah. Culture, there is no hiding a great culture, a toxic culture. People want other people to know what it's like to work there or what they've heard, which is really interesting about this topic about, hey, once you get into a company, what's the culture like? And what have you heard about it? It's before even a first impression, a company culture, right? Before you even get to an interview, you probably have heard about this company culture through the grapevine.
Yeah, and that becomes the reputation, right? Reputations of companies are often the culture of the company, right? So when I talk to job seekers and they get excited about a company, oftentimes they'll tell me they're excited because of the mission of the company. This is really cool. What they're working on is really cool. And then I might ask the question, tell me about the culture. And like, well, I really don't know yet, right? And I'm telling you, for everybody that's on this call, hear this, because I hear this from hiring managers a lot. The number one reason why people fail at a company is not because they don't have the skills and experience to do their job. That's down the list. Number one, they weren't a culture fit. They were not a culture fit. The number one reason why people leave companies is not because of compensation. It's not because of misalignment with their mission. It's because they don't feel like they're a fit with the culture of the company. So if you think about it, those two number ones are the most important thing, yet oftentimes we spend most of our research time on what the company's mission and vision is and what they're trying to accomplish, and less time really diving into the culture. So this is really key. And I would challenge you all that are on this call today, as you're all doing interviews with companies and seeking out new companies to potentially work for, focus on culture at least as much, if not more, than the other stuff, right? Because it will be the reason you will succeed or fail at that company. And it will be the reason that that company will succeed or fail with you. The other stuff will fall into line.
Absolutely. So, and I want to get into the interview portion of the culture, right? So if I haven't heard about it through the grapevine, or I don't know anyone at that company, I have a question from Carlo that he asks. I once was hired at a company where the CEO was a screamer. How do you figure this out before you accept the position if you were not offered an opportunity to interview with him ahead of accepting?
It's funny, Carlo. I wonder if I know that company. So this is really, really funny. Thanks for sharing that, Carlo. So I put a CFO into a company years ago. The company was pre-IPO, and I put in a CFO, a buddy of mine. I'd become friends with this guy. Actually, I made an intro. I didn't even do it as a search. In fact, the CEO, who now is a friend of mine, said to me, "Listen, if I hired you on a search, what would be different?" And I said, nothing. He would be number one or number two in the search. I can guarantee that. And I said, I didn't do a search. I'm just introducing you a guy who's taken 5 companies public. He thought his controller was the right guy, even though he'd not ever worked at a public company, nor ever taken a company public. So I said, yeah, I don't know. And they were raising a bunch of money, like a couple $100 million. So it was a big deal. And so I introduced him to this guy. He hires the guy. And my buddy calls me like 2 weeks in, and he's like, so-and-so's a screamer. I go, what do you mean? He goes, no, he literally screams at people. I'm like, wow, I had no idea. And he goes, yeah. I said, well, how does that sit with you? He goes, not well. He goes, what do you think I should do? I said, well, what I would do is I would take him aside and say, listen, I'm not going to tell you how to manage other people. That's on you. But I'm going to tell you how I like to be managed. And I'm going to tell you, more importantly, how I don't like to be managed. And I've seen you scream at some folks, and if that works for them and it works for you, I'm not going to get in the middle of it. But I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't work for me. So this isn't a threat or anything else, but I just want you to know, the first time you ever scream at me will be the last time you ever scream at me. I will not be here the next day. I will walk out the door. I don't care how many stock options I have or anything else. I'm not going to be in a culture like that where I'm treated that way. So I just want you to understand it. And he worked for him through the IPO and even a couple of years beyond that. And that's kind of what he was. He was a journeyman CFO who would take companies public, and it all worked out because he kind of laid down the law. So I don't think I totally answered Carlos' question. The other part, how do you find this out ahead of time?
Yeah.
You've got to ask. And sometimes sharing stories of what works and what doesn't work for you is important. And then if you find out, listen, I'm not going to be reporting to the CEO, but the CEO is kind of a screamer, how is that going to affect me? Well, at some point it might, because my direct boss is going to be subjected to that kind of pressure and that kind of treatment. So maybe that becomes a corporate norm. So you really have to watch out for that. It's kind of hard to work for a company where the CEO has what he or she thinks is an accepted norm and does that to all their direct reports. And these people absorb it and don't refer it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, Kristen.
Yeah.
You work for some interesting cultures.
I did.
Do you want to tell us about one that I'm thinking of in particular? Are you allowed to? Did you have to sign an NDA?
I think I signed an NDA.
You don't have to say the name of the company, but I mean, it's a well-known company.
It's a very well-known company. It's in the fashion industry. This leader, the CEO of this company, had a toxic way of leading. And you wouldn't know, I wouldn't know when I got hired in at 24, how would I have known to even ask, hey, how does how does my direct report speak to people? You know, how do you even ask that in a question or in an interview, right? So you learn that, and I think Carlo learned that real quick. Was you learn that probably the first day. They're definitely, that's something that they're not hiding.
Yeah.
And like you said, it trickles down. If no one questions it, it becomes the norm, and that's what you think as normal. And if you don't come from that, if you don't know, like, that's, hey guys, hey everyone, really quick, this isn't normal. Like the way he speaks, the way this leader speaks to people is not normal. This is not healthy. So I did eventually leave, but yeah, like you said, it trickles down. And as you know, you place CEOs, you place heads of companies. Um, a leader is what exactly he does. His attitude, the way he leads, the way he thinks people should be spoken to, sets the tone for the rest of the company.
Yeah. And I think there are ways to figure this out and not be surprised,
Right.
Now, maybe Kristen, when you got in there, I'm sure you interviewed with some other folks while you were there. If you look back on it, was there anything you could have done to maybe find out, or at least say, huh. And by the way, you might still have taken the job. It was a great company to put on your resume. Maybe you would have said, hey, this is my Navy SEAL experience. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard, but it's going to go on my resume, and it's going to set me up to be able to do a lot of other things I want to do. Or you might have said, not a chance in hell. I don't want to do that. That's not the right thing for me. I don't want to be part of that. I'm out. So you never know. Sometimes knowing doesn't necessarily change your decision. It just means that, okay, I'm out here to get this stripe. I need this, stripe on my sleeve here that says I can be the CFO. They're going to give me the title, right? So I'll go ahead and take it. I'll do my hard labor. But what could you have done? Do you know? Like, were there people that you interviewed with that, looking back, you could have asked different questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I could have asked a lot more questions. I even think so. I was with you. I was at McDermott and Bull when we were just 18 people, maybe 20
Yeah.
people, and
Yeah.
now we are in three different or in all throughout North America and Europe. So I was here at McDermott Bull, wanted to get into the fashion industry, and I remember I wanted to give you, I think, 3 weeks, right? Maybe even close to, like, hey, what's the 3 weeks, even over 2 weeks notice? Like, how do I do,
Yeah.
like, a month? And I asked that with the HR, and she said, oh no, your direct report, the CEO, wants you here next week, which I think you told me, hey, that's, I place a lot of people, that might be a red flag. And at that time, 25, really thinking I want to be in the fashion industry, thought, maybe they're just eager to get me in, they're eager to fill this position, yada yada. No, turns out that is the culture, and that's how it was.
Yeah.
So there was indicators, there were red flags. I'm gonna say it, you were right. But I made my way back here.
You did. Well, and the other thing too is, having that on your resume and being that was such a goal of yours at the time,
Yeah.
Might not have been. I mean, one of the folks, Samir, is that Samir who said that? Let's see, Samia, sorry, said you can be a little bit more prepared psychologically if you know in advance. That's absolutely right, right?
Absolutely right.
So not everything is a bowl of cherries, and every once in a while something is not all that great, and that's okay. You might still say, I need that title. For instance, if there's somebody here on this program right now who's been, let's say, a VP of finance but never been a CFO, but they have an opportunity to become a CFO at a company and get that C title on their resume, you might go for 2 or 3 years of hard labor, knowing that you're going to put up with a culture that's toxic because you want to get that. And that might be the only opportunity that's been offered to you for a while like that. They might have to do that because toxic cultures have those reputations, right? We did a search for a CEO of a company once, and we were like 3 weeks into the search, and 3/4 of the candidates we called, they said, oh, what company? And we told them, they're like, oh yeah, no, that CEO is hard as nails. I would never work with that guy. So I remember I was with my partner, Jeff Black, and he was doing the work, and he called me about this. And I know the CEO because we were involved in some Republican groups together back in the day. This is going back like 15 years. And so I said, well, let's call him up and have lunch with him. And so we did. We took him out to lunch, and he said, listen, And we told him the story. We said, listen, a lot of people that we're talking to don't want to come work for you. He goes, yeah, I've got a rep. He's actually a really nice guy. He said, listen, if you walk into one of my meetings and you don't know your stuff, I can be mean as heck. I'm not going to be that nice. We have these meetings. We have 20 people around the table. They all analyze deals that we're looking at. If you bring forward something and you don't have the answers to it that you should have, you're not going to be looked upon very favorably. And I'm probably not going to treat you all that well. And that's just that's my style. But you'll see people that have been with me 20 years because they get through that. And then they know I'm incredibly fair and I will support their projects as long as they know their answers. And these are people that are true professionals in their space, that are dotting their I's, crossing their T's, knowing all the answers. And if they come in prepared like that, I'm the best boss in the world. I'm going to give them the keys to the kingdom and they're going to go build an empire and they own part of it. And that's how I treat my people. So it's give and take, it's a plus and minus. And so we had to find those people that were wired that way. And we did. Once we knew that, we were able to find somebody who says, I'm up for that challenge. I'm going to be ready. And by the way, if I go in there and I get ripped a new one out of one of these meetings, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look internally and say, okay, what could I have done differently? And I'm going to look at that as a growing experience and hopefully not lose my job and get better for it. And the people that we placed with this company, that was their story. So even though bosses can be challenging or cultures can be challenging or things like that, there's also almost always a fit. And we have to find that fit. So you just have to decide if you're going to be that fit.
Absolutely. I remember going into an interview when I was leaving a certain, one company. I went into an interview and I remember the lobby was quiet, like dead quiet. And I wanted to leave. And I was like, if I leave, it's a bad look. A, B, it's rude. And, but I know deep down it is like eerily quiet. I would hate this. Like, I know this company is not going to be for me. You can't hear anything. And is there something that you can assess even without people, like an office maintained or an energy? You go into large corporations, mid-sized corporations. Can you tell what the culture is like just within the office?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And oftentimes I'm lucky enough to meet with the CEO and I get to see their interactions. Usually what I like to do is I like to get a tour, right? And so as a candidate, if you're going into a company as a VP and above candidate, ask for a tour and see like what you just said, Kristen, get the feel for the culture. I walked into one of my first big clients. This is going back to 1999. Geez, long time ago. Kristen was 12, probably, maybe even less. I don't know. Anyway, and I walked in and the office was the size of a football field. It was a Japanese company, great company, by the way. I don't mean this any disrespect, but really cool company. Everybody was in a cubicle. They had some private offices for meetings. You could hear a pin drop. I'm telling you, there was nobody talking. I'm walking by and I'm seeing these people doing this on their computers. I'm like, and nobody's really walking around and there's no banter. And you know me, Kristen, how often don't I banter? How many times have I walked by your desk and not like told a joke or said something stupid or funny or whatever? I engage.
I remember writing an email, and when I write, I get like really serious and focused. Yeah. And I remember you came over and you're like, "What's going on? What's wrong? What's going on?" And I think you said like, "Well, let's go get some coffee." And I'm like, "Oh no, this is just how I write an email." And you're like, "No, there needs I know the McDermott and Bull." Okay, that's my next question. What would you describe the McDermott and Bull culture?
Well, I want to jump into that. I'm going to jump into that in 1 minute,
okay,
but I will tell you
okay.
that I want to tell one other quick thing about walking around too. So we just kicked off a couple of searches with a really cool company in the aerospace world, and the CEO took us on a tour. And one of the things and I've known him, right? But one of the things that really attracted me to work for him, two things actually. One is at his prior company where we did, I don't know, 5 or 7 searches over a couple year period. I remember talking to the head of HR when he left that company. And she said, yeah, last week was his last week. And I said, oh, how was it? She goes, it was kind of a victory lap. I said, I don't know what that means. She goes, he went around and shook everybody's hand. And I go, wait, you have 1,300 employees. She goes, yeah, everybody's hand. I'm like, wow, What a cool guy. He went around because he grew up through that company, not from the beginning of his career, but he's like head of business development, and then they made him president, and then they made him CEO, and he was there when they were, I think, under 100 million, grew it to close to 1 billion. And that's how he treated people. And then he's now at this other company. We just kicked off a few searches, and we're walking around, and there's a guy there, and he's like, oh, he goes, he looks at me, he goes, hey, do you know a good dad joke? And I'm like, oh man. I mean, literally on the spot,
Such a
right?
good one. That's such a good one.
And he goes, I got to come up with something. He goes, this guy who's walking towards me, he and I always tell each other dad jokes. And so we're walking by. This is the CEO of the company, right? He stops him and he says, okay, all right. So, what is the difference between swine flu and bird flu? And he goes, and the guy's like, well, I don't know. He goes, with bird flu, you need to have a tweetment. With swine flu, you need to get ointment. And I'm like, this is the CEO of the company. And I love this. And by the way, as we're walking around, everybody stops what they're doing and they're high-fiving it. That is culture, right? Now, he might not pay as much as the next person. He might not have everything dialed in because the company it's an emerging company. It's more than a startup, but it's still kind of in that phase. And they're going to grow, and they're going to have they've got 60, 70 people. He'll grow it to at least 500 to 800 people in the next 3-4 years based on their plan, probably an IPO. I mean, really cool company. But you would work for this person and go to the ends of the earth because of the way he treats you. And that's important. And so when you walk through a culture like that, you see that, right? So the CEO not only has time for you, he takes time. And he takes time to know everybody. So that really had an impact on me. I do want to answer a couple questions, and then I'm going to go back to your question. So yeah. William Myers asked, what about Glassdoor or other review sites? They give you a feel for the culture if there are enough reviews and you weed out the outliers. I agree with that. Absolutely check it out. Now, one of the things I will say about Glassdoor, and I've seen this happen to us personally, even at M&B, is if you have somebody that wasn't a fit with a company or wasn't really kind of up to the level that you needed them to be, we've had people that we've terminated before who would write things down. And I've actually gone back to my people and said, gosh, I wish we could be at a space where even if somebody isn't a fit for our company, doesn't work out with our company, they still say they're better off for the experience of having worked there. So that means that we have to terminate really, really well. And what's a way that we can do that where we treat people with such respect that they feel like, wow, they just broke up with me, but I actually feel good about them, right? And so that's something we strive for, but we've had a couple of reviews in the past and we'll see it from time to time. And it's like, oh man, that really bums me out. So you have to take things with a grain of salt. And so I think Glassdoor is a great thing. Get all the information you can. And then also everybody you come in contact with through the interview process, ask those questions. And if they downplay culture, if they're like, well, listen, we're really about, this is a fast growing company. We're moving fast. We don't have time for all these things. That should be a red flag for you that culture's not important to them. And you should be prepared that there's going to be some cultural norms that maybe aren't a fit for you if you believe certain ways, or they could be a fit for you. It depends. Right. But as a leader, and most of the people that are on this Zoom are leaders, right? So as a leader, you also have to know how you're going to fit into the company, because if the company has cultural norms that they want you to apply as a leader that are against your personal values and norms, then you have to be able to come to grips with that. I'll give you an example. I've had clients before that have moved into companies that have been, or I should say candidates that have moved into a company, become a client, and they'll say, hey, this company has this philosophy that, they just do this. Somebody's not a fit, you're out. And I really want to develop people. I had one guy, great CFO, who went into a company, said, you know how you go into these companies and you'll interview people and you'll say, why did you leave? Oh, they brought in a new CFO who brought in his own people. I'm never going to be that guy. It doesn't mean I won't bring in some of the folks I've worked with in the past if I have other people not work out. But I want to assume that everybody I inherit in this team are worthy, and I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I even want to develop them to the point where if they're not yet worthy and they can be, I want them to know that I have their back. Now, at some point, if they're not up to being on our Super Bowl winning team, I'm going to have to make a change. But it doesn't serve the company. It doesn't serve me and my reputation. It doesn't serve our people and our team if people have the philosophy that I'm going to come in, clean house, and bring in my old team, and that's how I work. I'm just not going to be that person. So ask questions about, especially if you're going in as a leader, tell us about what you expect from leaders. How quickly do you want to see leaders make changes in their organization? Because if you want me to come in 30 days and start, slashing and burning, I might not be that person. That's not my philosophy. Let me tell you what my philosophy is, and make sure as a leader, you're a good fit with the philosophical culture that they have at the company.
Nadine, these are great. Nadine Grenier says, I love the questions. What are the unspoken rules here? Or what happens here that we wouldn't want to see on the 5 o'clock news?
Yeah, that is great. That's a great question. And Nadine, thanks for bringing that up. I think that, and those are good questions to ask. What would you, and here's another question, right? And I've asked this of people too, when I go in and I'm kicking off a search and I'm trying to gauge the culture of a company, I will ask, what are some things about your current culture that maybe you're not proud of, that maybe you're trying to change, and I have those things. You asked me that question, Chris, and I've been dodging it. But the M&B question, what about our culture here? At McDermott and Bull, I'm proud of our culture overall and how we treat our folks. But I would say that we have a little bit of a legacy too that we're trying to get away from, especially when we get stressed. Right now we're really busy. I wanted to share that with everybody too. Anybody who's a job seeker right now, I talk to CEOs all the time. I've got a couple meetings with people today. That's why I'm all suited up. And they're busy and they're hiring like crazy. We're busier than we've ever been. We have more searches than we've ever had in our company. So that's creating some stress. And what we're doing is we're trying to work through it. But we have a great team of folks. And every once in a while, some of our folks on the search consultant side can be a little bit more demanding on some of the other folks. And some of them they haven't worked with in the past because we've grown our team quite a bit. Since COVID, I think we've added 7 or 8 people between researchers and recruiters just in the last probably 3 months. And so we're all starting to get to know one another. And there's a little bit of those growing pains. And so, what I would say is we're in a space where hopefully our culture will bring people back to the center and back to the cultural norms that we have kind of adopted as a company. Care for the greater good. We have these guiding principles at McDermott and Bull. And so, we need to bring people back there and need to say, hey, listen, we get that you're stressed, but, there's certain ways to treat our partners and our internal partners. And we're going to get more out of them if we treat them like internal partners and we give them the benefit of the doubt than if we're micromanaging and undermining and doing all these other things. So we're an evolving culture, I would say.
And I would even add to that, Angela Anderson, I know some of you on this call has worked with Angela. She's our chief operating officer, and she knows a great culture. She's, built our culture from the beginning, and she knows what McDermott and Bull should be and how it should be run and how leadership should be run. So huge big ups to Angela for also helping shape our culture, what it is today.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. She's been with us 12 years. She's seen us grow through some of this, and she's come to me a lot. She and I just had an hour meeting. We do 1 hour once a week at least. And she kind of went through some stuff, and she's kind of the absorber. She absorbs when this happens. And I'm like, okay, you got to let it out sometimes too. And but we partner on this to, like, we're going to send a note out today and say, hey guys, we're really busy. Let's not forget that. And we have to be a little bit more flexible in some of our metrics and give our people a few extra days because we're incredibly loaded right now. And, you can't be demanding the impossible. Right. And so she's really good at that, but she's also a heck of a recruiter. And when she's building the team, she keeps a very high bar to make sure that we're not going to create more problems. So I think do we have more questions that came up, Kristen?
Yeah. Cindy has a great question. Hey, Cindy. Hey, girl. She asked, when interviewing for a remote position, how can you figure out the culture?
Yeah. So go back to the same things, right? So do your research online, but then also ask the questions of everybody you interview with. By the way, this is something my daughter asked me this, because I told her about the culture question. How would you describe the culture? And she said, what if I'm interviewing with 3 or 4 people? I don't want to ask them all that same question. I said, no, absolutely you do.
Right.
You want to see if you get different answers from people, and you probably will. It doesn't mean that some are lying. It means that their experience of the culture is different, but it helps you paint a picture of what the cultural norms like are at that company and whether or not that's going to be a fit for you. You have different people who describe their experience differently. That's normal, but ask everybody. And sometimes if you get into a panel discussion, Cindy, that's kind of cool. Say, hey, listen, I'm not looking for one right answer. And by the way, you all could have a different answer, and that's totally fine because your experience of this question is going to be different. How would each of you describe the culture here? And I'd love to go through the line. When you start interviewing them and you ask them this question about culture, they're going to take you really seriously, and they're going to want to sell you. It puts you in the driver's seat now, the interview, where they're going to want to come off in a good light, but also be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually been in an interview with my boss, Bianca, and we got asked about culture here at McDermott and Bull, and we had 2 completely separate answers, both positive, of course,
Good.
both positive, but we both had our own ideas of what McDermott and Bull culture is and, what we really value here. So it's really great to see kind of the difference in both. So I really like that. I like that point.
Everybody has a different experience of it. The other thing you could do, I'll leave this one last thought too, is go on LinkedIn, see if there's folks that you know there, see if there's people that went to your university or people that may have worked at prior companies that you've worked at, anybody that you might know there, and do a back channel check on them. I always talk about back channel reference checks. That's where somebody like me or somebody in the company calls somebody that might have worked with you in the past, but they're not somebody that you gave as a reference, right? You can do the same thing on the company and say, hey, on the side, tell me a little bit about this company. I want to hear. I'm looking at something that's an interesting opportunity, and I really want to know if it's going to be a right fit for me. And so you can get some, kind of unabridged, unmanaged reference on the culture from somebody that knows that they can speak freely.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I have one last question here.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about it a little bit. I mean, Nadine had that fantastic question of what are the unspoken rules here? What do you want? What don't you want to see on the 5 o'clock news? All of that. You kind of touched on it in a panel discussion. Is there any last notes that you have in terms of a few examples of good questions regarding a company's culture?
Yeah. So I would say ask this question, right? When things are stressed and people are anxious, how does leadership react?
Oh, that's a good
Okay.
one.
And I'm going to throw this out too. And some of you guys might not agree with it, and that's okay. Don't do it if you don't feel comfortable with it. The question in the past, if somebody said, hey, tell me a little bit about work-life balance, that was always a red flag for me to hear, like, oh, okay, this person's not as focused on their career. I've grown up, I've changed. I think work-life balance is really important because I'm a believer now that if you're out of balance, what I get from you Monday through Friday won't be as good either, right? And at the end of the day, I'm all about performance. We use coaches at our company. 51 out of 60 people in North America at McDermott Bull have coaches, right? So we've got this coaching business through now Activate 180, which is Project Activate. We're morphing it, where we're doing corporate coaching. Kristen, I think you have a coach. I have a coach.
I do.
And one of the things I've learned from our coaches is that, there is a true thing called burnout. And at the end of the day, if I'm looking at Monday through Friday in ultimate performance, what is the output of our team? What are we actually getting done and moving well through the process? I want that number to be maximized. I want to be able to maximize that performance. And if in order to do that, I need people to have a great work-life balance, then why wouldn't I want that? If somebody says, listen, I like to shut off at 7 and come back on at 7 and give you a hard, 8 to 12 or whatever, whenever it's needed, but I want to be able to have family time and I want to be able to disconnect. Those are actually good. Those are good things. They actually set people up to give you better performance later. I used to not believe this. So I think you can ask this question, and I would, if it's something that you feel strongly about, ask it, because if they look at it as a red flag that you're asking about work-life balance, that may be a problem. That may be a sign that they're kind of stuck in the old ways of doing things. we've changed a lot. You asked about culture. I'll just share this. At McDermott Bull, we do unlimited vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some fear originally about that from some of my partners who said, well, what about people that take advantage? And so I started listing off some high performers. They're like, oh, no, not them. Oh, not the person. I said, so who are you afraid about? And they go, well, people that maybe don't deserve it. I said, well, why don't we just get rid of them? If somebody doesn't deserve it, let's just get rid of them. Let's get people in here. Let's pay them really well. Let's give them great benefits. Let's give them great vacation. Let's help them live great lives. And if we can do that, and we have people that fit well within our company, we don't have to be worried. We don't have to keep everybody in a fence because of 2 or 3 people were afraid to get outside of the fence.
Absolutely. And I don't even, we talk about it all the time, but I don't even feel like I'm working. I don't even need to go on vacation, even though I do,
Yes.
but it doesn't feel like I have to go on vacation because I have such a great time here. So there really is something to say about that. And I love that you brought that up, because that could be another topic on another day of unlimited vacation, how it really helps the work and everyone in the office. So
well, and it tells your people that you want them to live great lives, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we had one person come to us before we did this, and she had this opportunity to go to Asia for 10 days. We're like, yeah, you should go. And then she had this opportunity to go to Europe with her husband for 2 weeks. She's like, but I'm not going to have enough vacation time. We're like, why don't we just change this policy? This is dumb. Yeah. So dumb. And she's one of our stars. She's been with us almost 10 years. We got to do this. So since we've done it, it's been phenomenal. So anyway, I think we're over time. Thank you, Kristen. This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. You guys, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending. Join us next week, next Monday, same time, same place, on the topic career vision mapping. So Rod, something a little bit about, Activate 180, something that Rod really is great at, and knowing exactly where everyone wants to be and how everyone can really have a really great work-life balance in their own life. So
yeah, I want to actually address that question in a way that helps you position yourself as the answer to a job that you're interviewing for based on your career vision map. There's a way to do this. You connect the dots, and then they're more likely to connect the dots. Anyway, Memorial Day is next Monday.
You know what? Thanks, Rod.
That was Cindy. Cindy said that.
Cindy, thanks.
Just popped up. Thanks, Cindy.
So we'll be here. I don't know if you guys, we won't be here because we are taking our vacation. Yes, we're taking our vacations, and we do take them. So we will see you the following week, and look out for an email for our next office hours, and we will all see you at our next one.
All right.
Alrighty.
Take care. Email us if you have any questions. We're happy to answer them offline too.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rod.
Everybody. Bye.
All right. Bye.